Today, we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders roster with Andy Greene. What was his season like? What, if anything, is his future with the Islanders? An Islanders legend also has a rink named after him on Long Island, and the Bridgeport Islanders are staying alive in the AHL playoffs. All that and more coming up on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. I know I did. And thank you for being a part of the Locked On Islanders family and for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. If there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question you'd like to ask us, a comment about something we said on the show, or maybe a topic that you'd like us to discuss on the show, feel free to send us an email. The email address, as always, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings from the draft to trade rumors to free agency and who the next coach is going to be. We will have it all for you throughout the offseason right here on Locked On Islanders. We will continue our player-by-player review of this season, and we are turning now toward defenseman Andy Greene. Greene, right now, 39 years of age. He will turn 40 in October, and here is a guy who has spent the last 2+ seasons with the Islanders. He was acquired at the trade deadline in 2019-2020, played 69 games for the Isles this year, 2 goals, 10 points, was a -13, and had only 10 penalty minutes all year. Given the Islanders 17 minutes, 25 seconds of ice time per game on average, that's 10 seconds a game less than what he did a year ago. And, you know, the thing about Andy Greene, steady, smart, but, how often, I guess the question is he physically willing at this stage in his career? He's not going to contribute a lot of offense, but he is not going to make too many major mistakes in his own zone, at least not positionally. And, there are times when he's going to turn the puck over. There are times when he's going to get out muscled a little bit. But, Andy Greene is reliable, and having him on the roster, having him out there on the bench and on the ice, it almost gives you an extra assistant coach for the defenseman especially. And while we've talked a lot about what Zdeno Chara has meant to the development of some of the younger defensemen, especially Noah Dobson, don't overlook what Andy Greene does. Andy Greene is a professional's professional. He certainly gets the job done and is one of those players that knows how to, be in the right place at the right time, and just sort of gets, it uses his experience and uses his knowledge of the game, knowledge of the players to anticipate plays and get in the right place at the right time. Does he have speed at this stage in his career? No. Is he the biggest, most physical player at this stage in his career? He's 5'11", $190, kind of average size, average weight. But again, is he still a useful player at this stage in his career? Yeah, he probably is. He is not going to be more than a third pair defenseman at the age of 39. But you know what? If he comes back, and I don't think necessarily that he will, Andy Greene would be, to me, the ideal seventh defenseman, maybe even a player coach on a team like the Islanders. Let him be the next Dennis Seidenberg, where at the end of the season, maybe he plays 25, 30 games, but he helps in practice. He schools the younger players and helps them advance and accelerate quickly as far as where they're at in their development, leads them by example as far as preparation is concerned for games, for practices, for film study and all of that, but you're not going to get significant minutes from him. He's not going to play 25 minutes a game. He's not going to be the leader of your team from a play-by-play standpoint, but he can certainly add something to the mix because of his veteran experience. I believe the odds are that Andy Greene may very well retire at the end of the season. If he chooses not to retire and comes back, then the question becomes, do the Islanders want to bring him back? He's already played. He played last year at $750,000, which is more or less the veteran minimum. So, is it worth paying him the same thing to come back and play at or near the veteran minimum for one more year and let him serve as an insurance policy? I think part of it is going to depend on what Zdeno Chara does. If Chara retires and Greene wants to come back, I could see Lou Lamoriello saying, all right, one more year, Andy, veteran minimum, you're back. We're not promising you, to be a full-time player, but we know you can contribute and help the team, even if it is to a large extent with intangibles more than with specific aspects of your game. But we have to see, what Greene wants to do and then whether or not the Islanders want him back. And I think part of it is going to be determined by who the next coach the Islanders hire. Who's that going to be? And what kind of a system does that coach want to play? I think, you get a coach who has a similar system to what Barry Trotz played. If they hire Lane Lambert, Andy Greene, more likely to be welcome back, but we'll see whether or not Andy Greene will be an Islander next year. I would say this, the odds of him coming back as an Islander are better than the odds of him coming back and playing elsewhere. In my mind, it's likely he's either going to retire or come back and play for the New York Islanders, but we'll take a look and see. To me, if he's one of your top six defensemen, that's a little bit of an issue. If he is going to be your seventh defenseman, I think that's like sort of the perfect spot for him to be in, and we'll see what he ends up doing. We have got a lot more to discuss. We'll have the latest on the Bridgeport Islanders playoff run in the AHL, plus a rink named after an Islanders Hall of Famer on Long Island, so we'll talk about that. And we also have our Islanders birthday of the day, a physical defenseman who was a member of all four Islanders Stanley Cup winning teams. All that and more still to come on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen. Now for your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. nightly recaps of every NHL playoff game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So the Bridgeport Islanders, staying alive. They get the job done by winning a important game, Game 3 of their best-of-5 series. They lost both of their first 2 games at home in Bridgeport, both by 1 goal. Game 1 we talked about. Game 2, which was last Thursday night, a double overtime thriller that the Islanders lost 7-6. And the Islanders fell behind 4-0 in this game. And that was in the first period, ended up tying it 6-6, but 3:36 into double overtime, Zach Dalpe ends up scoring the goal, and it ends up being the game winner, obviously. And, in the first period, you're down 4-0, and at the end of the period, you're down 5-3. So this team certainly bounced back. And Corey Schneider, who had played so well throughout the playoffs so far for Bridgeport, replaced by Jakub Skarek, who stopped 31 of 34 shots. And again, I think when you look at it, too many defensive breakdowns for Bridgeport overall. And that's one of the things that cost them in the first period and ultimately in the game. Simon Holmstrom getting the first goal, Michael Dal Cole the second, and then Kyle McLean with a shorthanded breakaway goal to make it 5-3 after 1 period. But wow, just a real gutsy comeback effort. And, Chris Terry finding Austin Zarnik with a pass early in the second period to pull to within 5-4. And then, coming back and just forcing the overtime, you have to be pleased with that. But ultimately, losing both games at home, hurting this Islanders team, and you're like, okay, you're in trouble. You lose both home games. What happens now? How would the Islanders respond? Well, Game 3, the Islanders get 2 goals from Simon Holmstrom in the third period. They're 3 minutes, 40 seconds apart, and the Islanders win it 3-2 over the Checkers and stay alive. And that was the big point. Corey Schneider came back, made 32 saves. So even though he didn't play particularly well in Game 2, bounces back and has a good game in Game 3. And I think Brent Thompson's decision to go back to the proven veteran for Game 3 spoke volumes. Chris Terry also scoring on this one and picking up an assist. Austin Zarnik with 2 assists. So all 3 of those players, Terry, Zarnik, Holmstrom, with multiple point games, and the Islanders stayed alive. So a big one there. And I think part of it was what Corey Schneider did in the first period. It was scoreless, but the fact that after having a shaky Game 2, Schneider came back out and did the job with shutting him out in the first period. I think it just really gave the Islanders confidence that they were going to get the good goaltending, and they did it. The penalty kill was good. They killed both Charlotte power play chances, but the Islanders power play, unfortunately, going 0 for 2. Game 4 is tonight, a 7 o'clock Eastern time start. Again, the Checkers are the home team, but you could get the game on AHL TV and watch it there. This a big one. If the Islanders can win tonight, they force a 5th and deciding game, and that, folks, would be a big one. It would be Wednesday night at 7 o'clock if they are able to pull it off. Meanwhile, some touching news locally on Long Island, the Dix Hills Ice Rink, which is run by the town of Huntington. They have renamed the rink the Clark Gillies Arena. And I'll tell you, that was a touching moment. It was done this past weekend on Saturday, and a lot of people in attendance. Pam Gillies, Clark's widow, quoted as saying, "I can say with 100% certainty that Clark would have been so proud of this honor that you have bestowed upon him. I cannot tell you how happy Clark would have been to know that future generations of figure skaters and hockey players will be learning the game that he loved in a rink bearing his name." So that was touching. Bob Nystrom also there. He said, "I think it's fantastic. There's no question that young kids should see that name hanging over them because he was an all-star. He did a lot for these youngsters and for their families, and it's a heck of a way to give him the recognition that he deserves." In addition to Nystrom and Pam Gillies, John Tonelli, Pat LaFontaine, Ed Westfall, Patrick Flatley, and Dwayne Sutter were on hand representing the alumni. And then from the current Islanders, co-owner John Ledecky, Anders Lee, Casey Cizikas, Josh Bailey, Cal Clutterbuck, and Matt Martin all there. And Matt Martin had this to say, which I think was absolutely appropriate. "There will never be another Clark Gillies, but if we could all strive to be a little more like him, this world would be a much better place." And then Martin mentioned the three things that Clark Gillies loved: his family, helping kids, and the New York Islanders. So a moving moment and an appropriate tribute to Clark Gillies, a man who did a lot for the Islanders on the ice, but maybe did even more after his retirement for Long Island. I mean, you go to Huntington Hospital, there's a wing of the hospital, the juvenile wing, named after Clark Gillies for the money that his foundation put into it. And, you know, to have the rink named after him is certainly a fitting tribute to Clark Gillies, his impact in the hockey community and on Long Island in general. So check out that rink at the Dix Hills Ice Rink in Dix Hills Park on Vanderbilt Parkway. And, you know, I've been at that rink many times, and it was great to see Gillies honored in that way. And there is a banner with his number 9 jersey hanging in the rafters, and then a logo with that says Dix Hills Park, Clark Gillies Rink, with his number 9 and 2 crossed hockey sticks now painted at center ice. And again, just a very fitting and appropriate legacy for the late, great Clark Gillies, who we lost earlier this year. We have got more to discuss on today's show. We have a 4-time Stanley Cup winner with the Islanders, a physical defenseman who doesn't always get remembered the way he should. He's our Islanders' birthday of the day. We've got that and more coming up on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing it was only 150 calories but packed 16 grams of protein. That's what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I have never had anything like this before. They're available right now, but we can't promise that they'll be there tomorrow, so get them today at Built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you in on a little secret, because that's what friends do. It's a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, you heard me. It's delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. And with just 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and only 9 grams of sugar, this limited time flavor is an amazing option if you're looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety in your day. Go to Built.com and get birthday cake puffs now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. Yesterday, Sunday, was the 68th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Dave Langevin, the native of St. Paul, Minnesota, kind of drafted as an afterthought, a 7th-round pick of the Islanders, 112th overall back in the 1974 NHL amateur draft. He played 4 years at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and then because he was also drafted by the WHA's Edmonton Oilers, he signed with Edmonton and played with them for 3 seasons, 76-77 through 78-79, the last 3 years that the WHA was in existence. But when the WHA admitted 4 teams into the league, they could only protect a small number of players, and Langevin joined the Islanders in 1979-80, right in time for the 4 Stanley Cup runs. Stayed with the Isles through the end of the 84-85 season. So he was an Islander for 6 seasons. They won 4 Stanley Cups, reached the Cup final in the other year. Not a bad run for Dave Langevin. And Langevin, never a dirty player, but always a physical, defensive defenseman. Wasn't going to make a lot of headlines like your Gillies and your Trottiers and your Bossies and your Dennis Potvins. But you ask Billy Smith and Chico Resch and Roland Melanson, you ask the Islanders goalies from this era what Dave Langevin meant to this team, and they'll tell you how important his physicality was. Topped 100 penalty minutes twice with the Islanders in 79-80 and again in 80-81. Never a big goal scorer. His most prolific offensive season, 4 goals and 21 points in 1982-83. We're going to go back and look at one of his better games with the Islanders. And this is Game 6 of the Patrick Division Finals of the playoffs, April 23rd, 1982 at Madison Square Garden. Islanders up 3-2 in the series, looking to close out the Rangers. Billy Smith, the goalie for the Islanders. Eddie Mio is the goalie for the Rangers. And the Islanders get on the board first. Butch Goring, his third, unassisted at 11:01 of the first period. Islanders take the lead. But Gordy Lane heads off for roughing. The Rangers get a power play, and Reijo Ruotsalainen cashes in his 4th. Ron Duguay and Mark Pavlich with the assist at 13-13. After 1 period, Islanders won, Rangers won. Butch Goring makes it a 2-1 game. His 4th of the playoffs. Dwayne Sutter, the assist just 33 seconds into the second period. But the Rangers do answer back. Billy Carroll of the Islanders off for hooking. Barry Beck, the Rangers captain, his 1st of the playoffs. Reijo Ruotsalainen and Mark Pavlich with the assists. 2 power play goals for the Rangers. We're tied at 2. Bob Bourne, however, puts the Isles back in front. His 4th. Dave Langevin, our Islanders' birthday of the day, and Mike Bossy with the assist at 18-17. Islanders 3, Rangers 2 after 2 periods of play. The Rangers tie it in the 3rd, 5 minutes, 46 seconds in. Robbie Ftorek, his 7th. Barry Beck and Reijo Ruotsalainen with the assist. We're all even at 3-3, but 13:52 into the 3rd period. Our Islanders' birthday of the day. Dave Langevin, his 2nd of the playoffs. Wayne Merrick with the only assist. That is the go-ahead goal. And then with 32 seconds left, an empty netter by Bob Bourne, his 5th of the playoffs from Dennis Potvin, seals it. Islanders beat the Rangers 5-3, close out the series in 6 games at Madison Square Garden. Billy Smith, 22 saves to earn the win. But for Dave Langevin, our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goal, 2 points, a +2, 3 shots on goal, and yes, he had the game-winning goal. So we're a day late, but happy birthday to former Islanders defenseman Dave Langevin. Langevin, after leaving the Islanders, played 1 season for the Minnesota North Stars, 1 season with the LA Kings. He played in 513 NHL games, 12 goals, 119 points, 530 penalty minutes, and 87 playoff games, all with the Islanders, 2 goals, 19 points there. He also played in 216 WHA games with the Oilers and 23 more playoff games with the Oilers. Dave Langevin, a physical defenseman, a steady rock on the Islanders' blue line during the dynasty years. We wish him a very happy birthday and many happy more. The coaching search continues for the Islanders. We will keep you up to date on all of that. And of course, on tomorrow's show, we'll also discuss the Bridgeport Islanders and tell you how they did tonight in Game 4 of that playoff series. So we've got a lot more to talk about, and we will continue our player-by-player discussion of the Islanders roster. We have got a lot of players to discuss. We've only done 3 so far. Thanks again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. From first-round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's go Islanders.